Where, oh, where is our James Connolly? Where, oh, where is that gallant man? He's gone to organize the union, that working men might yet be free. Then who will lead the van? Then who will lead the van? Oh, who but our James Connolly, the hero of the working man.
Each year we have come to Arbour Hill to pay tribute to and to honour James Connolly and to rededicate the political struggle begun by James Connolly and to continue the struggle for a social republic, for a workers' republic, for sovereignty and independence. And today is the 101st anniversary of the execution of James Connolly and the other leaders of the 1916 revolution. The order of business today is that we will have flowers will be led both by the Communist Party, the Connolly Youth Movement, and by the US Communists Greg Godels and Joe Jemison, who are in the city visiting us and gave the James Connolly Memorial Lecture yesterday. So the first thing we will have is the laying of flowers. I call upon Linda Walker, the chairman of the Communist Party, to lay the flowers on behalf of the Communist Party. The next will be Anya Lamb from the Connolly Youth Movement. And the final flowers will be led by Greg Godels, US Communist for many, many decades. He spoke yesterday at the James Connolly Memorial Lecture, and coming from the belly of the beast, he's more than welcome here this afternoon. Greg. Those who wish to lay flowers, please do so now. Our next item will be, we'll have a minute's silence in memory of those the leaders of 1916 and all those who have given their life in the fight for Irish freedom. Thank you, Cormac. Today we have, as I say, we have come here every year to honour the name of James Connolly, his contribution to the struggle for Irish freedom and independence, to a great working class leader, and to rededicate ourselves to the cause that he stood for, what he believed in, and to rededicate to that struggle. It is not out of ritual or formulae, but out of a deep commitment and a belief that the ideas and beliefs and ideas of Connolly still remain relevant to the working class today, and it's important that we continue to raise and bring those ideas of Connolly to each new generation of Irish working youth. Today, I call upon the Connolly Youth Movement, Adam Murray from Belfast. He will address this gathering on behalf of the Connolly Youth Movement. Adam.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the party for this opportunity to speak to this gathering. 101 years ago, on the 12th of May 1916, a man whose principles and teachings still guide the leftist youth of Ireland was executed by firing squad. If the British authorities and the Irish bourgeois of the time thought that with his execution would be the end of his ability to cause trouble for the establishment, how wrong they were. 101 years later, the ideals, teachings and actions of James Connolly still inspire and instruct young leftists across the length and breadth of Ireland and further afield. We continue to draw strength from his example as we challenge the status quo and play our diligent part in organising the resistance alongside our comrades in the Communist Party of Ireland. Our eyes are wide open to the inherent feelings of the abhorrent capitalist system. We have no illusions about the political and economic systems which control and dominate so much of our lives. Young people today are crying out for change, crying out for their fair share, for stable employment, for a decent education, for affordable housing, for health care and a reasonable sharing out of the wealth of the nation. We see the greedy and corrupt politicians bending over in subservience to international corporatism and the great god of foreign investment. We see that their interests are not our interests. We see the social services struggling and closing. We see the right-wing politicians cheating us north and south. We see families being evicted and citizens sleeping in the streets. We see the drugs crisis, the health crisis, the housing crisis. We see our politicians failing to support the most vulnerable refugees and the complicity of the Irish government in supporting imperialism. We see our fellow young people, the ones who stay, struggle to survive on low wages in precarious work, always threatened that if we don't accept the exploitation, we will simply be replaced. We see those who can leave leaving, and those who can neither leave nor find work struggling to survive. The crisis gripping the young people of Ireland is nothing short of criminal. To quote Blind Boy Boat Club from the Rubber Bandits on the Late Late Show, my generation are the ones jumping on planes or jumping in rivers. North and South politicians have failed to put in place the necessary support for young people's mental health, and it's costing lives. Some say that it's unbelievable that in 2017 things can be so bad for this coming generation, worse than the previous generation. We in the Connolly Youth Movement say that not only is this situation to be expected, it was inevitable. Capitalism will never serve the many. The bourgeois state cares more about profit and control than it does about the health and well-being of its young working class citizens. This is true whether you're in the Republic or the North. Wherever you look in the context of neoliberalism in Ireland, Britain, America, the European Union, wherever neoliberalism is dominant, socialism is suppressed, and it is the working class who are left behind, pressed down upon, forgotten or exploited. The current economic order is killing our planet, and it's killing our young brothers and sisters. We have no time for complacency. The young people of the world recognise the need for radical change and for a fight back. We reject the status quo. We reject capitalism. We reject the greed of politicians, bankers and corporate parasites. We reject bourgeois politics and we reject imperialism. Drawing inspiration from James Connolly, with the support of our comrades in the Communist Party of Ireland and our fellow young Marxists around the world, the Connolly Youth Movement will continue to keep the flame of Irish socialism alive. We will do our utmost to educate and organise other young people and to ensure that Marxism lives in Ireland. We have seen recent successes. We've opened our 4th branch in Mullingar, and we welcome our comrades there. This is only the beginning. We will continue to organise, and we will ensure that there will always be young Marxists in Ireland ready to answer the call. Gar Magat.
Thank you, Adam. The next speaker is Greg Godels. As I say, he's come to join us here in Dublin and delivered the James Connolly Memorial Lecture. We've asked him to say a few words, as we have all the guest speakers we've had at the Connolly Lecture. We've invited them to come and to lay flowers, but also to say a few words. So, Greg.
Thank you. On behalf of Joe, Jameson, and myself, I want to thank you for all the warmth, comradeship that you've shared with us in our visit to Ireland. We come with wishes, regards from communists and militant workers in the United States on this occasion. And thank you very much for including us in this. In our country, we had a martyr, Joe Hill. And after his martyrdom for the working class cause, we had a saying, and it was, wherever there are people who are oppressed, wherever there are people beaten by the police, wherever there are people that feel the pressure and the oppression of capitalism, there goes Joe Hill. I think today it's important that we say the same thing about James Connolly. I think it's something that we say about James Connolly. We like to believe that he's not just yours, but he's ours as well. That we and the entire world, the working class in the world. He's part of all of us. So let's just say that where people are struggling in Venezuela today, where they're trying to take hold of their own country and resist U.S. imperialism, James Connolly is with them. Those people in the Middle East, in Palestine, for example, who have Israeli imperialism with its boot on their back, I think James Connolly is with them as well. Those people throughout the world that are fighting capitalism, that are trying to offer to working people another solution, the solution of socialism, James Connolly is there as well. Everywhere that imperialism is, in every corner of the world where there's a U.S. base, where there's a corporation, James Connolly is there to stand with working people. And hopefully he'll be with us again when we achieve what we're all seeking, and that is socialism. Again, thank you for inviting us. It's been a great pleasure to be here. You've all been fantastic to us. So on behalf of Joe, thanks again.
Thank you, Greg. As people told you know that Connolly spent quite a bit of time in the United States, was an organiser for the Wobblies of the Workers of the World, was a very militant labour leader in the United States, and also was where he, in many ways, he practiced his linguistic skills. There's a famous Irish-American woman called Elizabeth Gurley Flynn, and she tells a story when she was asked to speak at a big gathering of Italian workers and workers in New York City, and when she approached the platform, she could see this Irish man speaking in Italian, and she discovered that this was James Connolly addressing the Italian workers who were in massive struggle at that time in the United States. So not alone was Connolly someone who's a hero of the Irish working class, Connolly has also made a huge contribution to the struggle of the United States working class in the early years to build what was then a most effective and fighting labour movement. And that's also our Scottish people, they also will claim Connolly as he was born and reared in Scotland. But I think it is here where Connolly cut his teeth, ideologically, politically, organisationally, in the labour movement and also in the organisation of the citizen army. And to a degree his ideas, as Greg would say, are very relevant today as the working class itself struggles to find a way forward, struggles to find the means to defend itself from the onslaught that is taking place. And there's no better place to start is to go back to Connolly, to see how to build a militant working class movement, what sort of ideas you need, the ideology you need to secure and to build that revolutionary defence working class organisation. So I now call upon Jimmy Doran, who will speak on behalf of the Communist Party.
Thanks, Eugene. Comrades and friends, once again we gather in Arbour Hill to commemorate the joint of Irish Labour that is James Connolly. We are here as an expression of our continued opposition to British imperialism and partition, to reaffirm our commitment to the struggle for national unity, political and economic independence and national sovereignty. We are here to reflect on his politics, learn from them, and from this knowledge use it to advance our struggle today and in the future. It's 101 years ago since James Connolly was executed, and we spent the last week celebrating the centenary of the Russian Revolution as part of the James Connolly Festival. And it is no coincidence that the working class are under sustained attack since the defeat and the betrayal of socialism in the Soviet Union. The capitalist class have tightened the screw on workers all over the world because now they don't have to compete with the socialism of the Soviet Union and the huge gains achieved by workers under socialism. Socialism is what we want, everything from the plough to the stars. Lots of political parties and groups claim James Connolly as their inspiration. Well, I have news for them. James Connolly was a socialist, a Marxist, an anti-imperialist, an internationalist and a trade union organiser. You can't cherry pick. James Connolly would have no hand, act or part in the 1990 Industrial Relations Act or social partnership. He would fight tooth and nail to have zero and minimum hours contracts banned and abolished, not twiddled and tweaked with. As a Labour leader, he would not be prosecuting children for peaceful protest. He was always on the side of the oppressed, not on the side of the oppressor. He would be down in Shannon with Niall Farrell and Margaret Darcy and the anti-war movement, defending our neutrality and trying to stop the American war machine turning Ireland into an aircraft carrier for their genocidal wars. He would have no truck with the imperialism of the European Union, and he would laugh at the deluded suggestion of using Brexit and membership of the European Union as a means to uniting the country by surrendering our national sovereignty and democracy to the imperialism of the European Union. Connolly said, if you remove the English army and hoist the green flag over Dublin Castle, unless you set about organising a socialist republic, you will fail, because England will rule you through our capitalists, our landlords and our financiers, and the whole array of commercial and individualist organisations she has planted in the country and watered with the tears of our mothers and the blood of our martyrs. James Connolly fought and died for a socialist republic, not the gone beam partitioned country with a divided people that the counter-revolution installed. There is one thing in common between these two parts of Ireland. The unelected power of private business determines the course of both economies through investment and production decisions. This gives them total power over government, no matter what party or jurisdiction we're talking about. What unites the people is our labour power, our class. Without the workers, capital is powerless. We have to set about reorganising the economy so it is no longer dependent on private capital. War has been declared on the working class all around the world under the neoliberal globalised economy that we now live. Let's call it what it is. It's imperialism. And under imperialism, 83% of all goods manufactured are now manufactured in the global south, in sweatshops for slave wages, with little regard for health and safety and total disregard for the environment. As a result of this super exploitation of workers in the poorest areas of the world, $500 billion is shipped back to the richest country in the world in profits earned on the backs of these exploited workers every year. Let's put that into context. It's the equivalent of 15,000 tonnes of gold being shipped back from the colonies every year. That is as much gold in 1 year than was plundered in the entire 350 years since Columbus set sail. Neither slavery nor genocidal clearances of indigenous peoples or the worst excesses of colonialism could achieve a wealth transfer of this magnitude. What military force could not achieve in the last couple of 100 centuries, market forces are doing on a massive scale every year, and they call this foreign direct investment. Foreign direct imperialism. The plunder of the poorest people of the world goes on unabated. So how does foreign direct investment operate in Ireland? It is the preferred option for Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael and the Labour Party. Sinn Féin are very fond of it as well. And in order to attract foreign direct investment into this country, they fall backwards over each other with grants, tax breaks, a supposed 12.5% corporation tax, despite the average being paid is 2.2%. In the case of Apple, our government has refused €13 billion in taxes from them. The government believes that these companies employ so many workers that there's no real need to tax their profits. There's no real need to tax the company's profits due to the amount of income tax paid by the workers. They feel that this is of enough benefit to the state. This is why we hear Noonan, Bruton and a plethora of other right-wing politicians constantly going on in the media in the need to increase competitiveness and broaden the tax base. What they mean is reducing wages, corporation and employment taxes on one hand, and on the other, increasing the tax take from wages, either directly by PAYE or indirectly by VAT or property tax or bin charges or cuts to services. This is broadening the tax base. This brings the citizens who don't earn enough money to pay tax out of their wages into the tax net by taxing them indirectly and reducing their income. Whether it is prescription charges, dental charges or cuts to services, whether it's increasing classroom sizes or closing hospital beds, cutting the blind pension or increasing the retirement age. This is all done to facilitate the low tax regime for business. This affects the most vulnerable of our citizens on the lowest incomes the most. Of course, they look after themselves with tax loopholes, tax avoidance schemes and tax incentive schemes for the wealthy and the constant paring back of the top rate of tax. So when the Labour Party states that they did not cut social welfare rates and they protected the minimum wage rate, it is a lie, because they did this by broadening the tax base. Smoke and mirrors, comrades. Smoke, mirrors and spin. A permanent pensionable job is now a thing of the past. Work is all short-term rolling contracts, part-time work, minimum or 0 hours contracts, and of course, bogus self-employment. When you don't know how much you're likely to earn from week to week, or day to day, or hour to hour, it's very hard to plan your life ahead. This uncertainty is intolerable, and there is no doubt that the soaring levels of depression and suicide among our people are added to by precarious employment. All wealth created is created by workers. Decency and dignity in employment is a human right. A fair day's pay for a fair day's work. Under these contracts, if you step out of line, your hours will be cut or your contract will not be renewed. It is back to the bad old days of the hired and fair. Sorry mate, there's no work for you here today. Such is the precarious nature of work today. This is wage slavery. Speaking of wages, half the population earn less than €28,000 a year. Average rents in Dublin are €300 a week. That's €15,600 a year. That's well over half the wages of half the population before taxes and stoppages are deducted. So after that, it leaves very, very little to live on. And they talk about a recovery. Recovery for who? Recovery for the employers whose soaring profits are barely taxed, and recovery for the rack-renting landlords who have increased rents by 66% in 6 years. That brings us on to housing. Homelessness is at an all-time high. Over 7,000 of our citizens are homeless, including 2,500 children. So well done, Mr. Kenny. According to the 2016 census, home ownership is at its lowest level since 1971. Overcrowding. Overcrowding has increased for the first time in 50 years. Private renting is now the predominant type of housing in our cities today. There are now more flats in Dublin than houses for the first time ever. One time, the cheapest form of private rental accommodation was a room in a shared house. Now, it's a shared room in a shared house. In your average 3-bedroom house, the main 2 bedrooms will have 2 sets of bunk beds. The box room will have 1 set of bunk beds. And possibly in the living room, there'll be a bed settee. It would be bad enough if you were sharing this with your family or with close friends, but this is with total strangers. I can tell you one thing, there won't be total strangers very long living in overcrowded conditions like that. This is what amounts to modern day tenements. And the state's answer to the problem is to hand over 800 sites, approximately 5,000 acres of publicly owned land, to the private developers to build houses. Private developers cannot be trusted. Priory Hall, Longboat Quay, property bubbles and crashes are examples of what happens when the building of homes is handed over to the private sector. In the 1930s, after several tenements collapsed in Dublin, killing over 100 of our citizens, the government was forced to act. The answer was then, as it is now, a massive public house building programme from planning to completion. Surveys consistently say that publicly built houses cost up to 40% less to build than private housing. People who own their own homes should be encouraged to sell them to the state as they go old and retired. This will help them in their retirement and add extra homes into the public property pool as they pass on and no longer need them. This is the way to give decency and dignity and certainty to our citizens in housing. Public housing, not social housing. Enda Kenny said he would end the scandal of waiting lists on trolleys. He also said that he would make Ireland the best little country in the world to do business in. Well, these two statements are totally contradictory. You either run the country in the interest of the people or in the interest of business. You cannot do both. The ruling class choose business interests, their interests every time. When the banks required €64 billion because of reckless trading by them and property speculators, the government chose to borrow this money in our name, thus putting private banking debt on the backs of our citizens for generations to come. This was a choice. They prioritised the banks over the people. On the May Day rally in Dublin recently, there was a chant, "Cuba has no waiting lists, that's because it's socialist." The reason that there are no waiting lists in Cuba is that the Cuban Communist Party prioritises the citizens and the environment above everything else. It is a policy decision. Cuba provides state creches for all the children of the country. Ireland provides a monthly payment and abandons the care of children to the private sector, whose priority is profit, not childcare. That's the difference. These are choices and priorities that either cause the problem or solve the issue. I mentioned the bank bailout there, so let's look at the choices and priorities here. A bailout, in my language, is a helping hand, a leg up, a dig out, but not in capital speak. Like everything else in the capitalist world, it's a business opportunity. We are being charged up to €7 billion a year to service that bailout, and we still have to pay it off in its entirety. But that's all right. The interest of the ruling class is served. Big business survives, and these massive debts accrued by them are paid off by you and me, the people, through tax increases, wage cuts, extra charges and the slashing of public services. Choices and priorities, comrades. Choices and priorities. As Connolly said, the government in a capitalist society is but a committee to organise the affairs of the rich. A bailout? I don't think so. It was a sellout. It's the greatest transfer of wealth from the working class to the rich in modern times. Meanwhile, Shawnee Fitz is getting chauffeured in his Merc to his rounds of golf with his political and business cronies, while you and me and the rest of the citizens pay off his debts. Allied Irish Bank is now owned by the state, and it should be kept in state ownership as a national development bank. That's a priority decision in the interest of the citizens. But no, the government has other ideas. Who will this benefit? You and me, or business interests? Their plan is to sell off Allied Irish Bank for a one-off short-term gain. If we retain it as a national development bank, its investments will be made in the interest of the common good. It will take a lot of the decisions on where the state should be investing out of the hands of private capital, and will set a standard for the other banks to live up to. The bank made a profit last year of over $1 billion, and that's set to rise in the future. So it makes absolutely no sense to sell it. Choices. Once again, business gets priority over the people. There's no doubt that if it is sold, the new owner will rationalise it, or put another way, asset strip it, slash jobs, cut pay and sell it on in a couple of years for a massive profit. We have seen this time and time again, going right back to the oil refinery on Whitty Island in the 70s, to the multiple sales of Telecom Ardon over the last couple of years. Choices and priorities, comrades, choices and priorities. War has been declared on the working class. We've lost a few battles, but we're beginning to win a few now at long last. The war is not over, and it won't be over till socialism is achieved. Our greatest weapon of all is ourselves, the working class, working together in unity to build a better world. We have our labour power. Without us, capital will never grow. Every scrap of surplus value is created by you and me, the people. They only get away with this system because people are willing to look the other way. It's time we stopped looking the other way. We have to free ourselves of the controls implanted in us by society. The media and the state will only tell us what they want us to know. It is time we expose the lies. Workers have realised that austerity does work, and it works very well for those that designed it, the ruling class. Workers are growing in confidence. They are now willing to go out and strike, and willing to stay out there until a victory is achieved in both the public and the private sector. From Dublin Bus to Lewis, from teachers to Tesco's. They continue to fight, despite being threatened with the use of scab labour in the Lewis and teachers, job losses in Bus Ardon, and being ridiculed in the media, where we're told every day that these outrageous pay demands will bankrupt the country. Well, workers know very well that it was neither bus drivers nor teachers that bankrupt the country. It was the bankers, the profiteers, as the capitalist monster began to devour itself with greed in its never-ending search for new markets and increasing profits. We must not forget the Irish citizens who have marched in their tens of thousands and refused to pay water charges and block the installations of meters to stop the government privatising the natural resource that is our water. From the start of the water campaign, the Communist Party of Ireland has called on the state to hold a referendum to enshrine public ownership and management of our water in the Constitution. We renew that call today. The state is not happy. Like I say, war has been declared on the working class. Ex-Labour leader Joan Burton is trying to get peaceful protest outlawed in the courts by having children and elected representatives of the people charged with her kidnap during a peaceful protest. She's willing to perjure herself to do so. If she is successful, it will have massive implications for protests in the future, whether it be protest marches or picket lines or striking workers. Once again, Social Democrats have been exposed as the last pillar that props up capitalism. They are but traitors to the working class. So, comrades, it's all about choices, priorities, dignity and decency. Since Connolly's death, the counter-revolution has triumphed and the Ghanaians have been in the driving seat. So much so, they are not happy enough to give our economic sovereignty to the European Union. They are now pushing for the acceptance of the trade agreements TTIP and CETA, which will hand over sovereignty to transnational corporations. The ruling class tell us at every opportunity in media and speeches, and drum it into our young people in schools and colleges, that there is no alternative, that there is no alternative. What would James Connolly say? James Connolly would say, if humanity is to survive and flourish in Ireland and the world, there is no alternative to the common good. There is no alternative to public housing. There is no alternative to public health. There is no alternative to peace. There is no alternative to ending world poverty. There is no alternative to this environment. There is no alternative to decency and dignity for our people. Comrades, there is no alternative. It's socialism or barbarism. We only want the earth.
Thank you, Jimmy. As we draw to a close, once again, I thank you all for coming. And just to reflect upon what is happening today in our own country, it is becoming more and more obvious that the institutions imposed by imperialism in 1921-22 are increasingly exposed as complete and utter failures. They have failed to meet the needs of the people. They have failed to bring unity, to bring development, to bring independence, to bring sovereignty. These institutions are part of the history, they're not part of the future. This we must dedicate ourselves once again to reassert the sovereignty, the democracy of the Irish people over the whole of the island. We want to bring unity, the Catholic and Protestant, to offer them a new world, a new way forward, a way forward that we, the working class, must shape the politics of this island in our interest, not in the interest of the ruling elite. So that's for those words. I say thank you all for coming. We draw to a close. You're all welcome to come and join us down in the cobblestones for a beer. There's some music. So if you like the banner, we'll go to the front again and we assemble up behind the banner and march again to the front, to the gates. So thank you all.
With Union men on every side. So we buried him down in yonder